This week's episode of the And She Looked Up podcast is brought to you by Fine Lime Designs. If the name sounds familiar, that's because it's my design business and the work I do there helps make this podcast possible. If you love colorful and whimsical art prints, greeting cards, and journaling stickers, then head over to my Etsy shop for a delightful browse. Just search for Fine Lime, like the fruit, designs, all one word, on Etsy, or click the link in the show notes. And now, on with this week's episode. Welcome to the And She Looked Up podcast. Each week, we sit down with inspiring Canadian women who create for a living. We talk about their creative journeys and their best business tips, as well as the creative and business mindset issues all creative entrepreneurs struggle with. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfield, and after leaving a 20-year career in corporate retail, I've been happily self-employed for 12 years. I'm a graphic designer, an illustrator, and a multi-six-figure-a-year entrepreneur in the digital content space. This podcast is for the artists, the makers, and the creatives who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the And She Looked Up podcast. As always, I am your host, Melissa, and I am back this week with my lovely semi-regular co-host, Heather Travis.
Hey!
Hello, Heather.
Hello.
Today, Heather and I are going to be talking about goals for 2022. We are coming up to that time of year where we all tend to take a look back at what we've done in our businesses for the year and evaluate things and think about what we want to do next year and start to jot down some notes. And so that is what Heather and I have been doing. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what goals we set last year, how we did with them, whether we were successful, whether we were not successful, and maybe a little bit about how we may have had to pivot a little bit, because sometimes you set all these goals at the beginning of the year and you realize halfway through the year you gotta switch it up a little bit. And then in the second half we are going to be talking about what we've got planned for our businesses in 2022. So I am hoping that this will give all of you some ideas about what you might want to do next year and maybe some perspective on how things went for you this year. I always find listening to how other people did with their goals tends to give me a fresh perspective on how I did with my goals and what I want to do next. So hopefully that helps some of you as well. So, Heather.
Yes.
Let's talk about 2021 for you. How did you do in terms of what goals you had set for yourself? Did you have some successes? Did you have some non-successes? I don't want to say failures.
I had all of the above. And funny enough, I mean, you and I both re-listened those episodes, and it is kind of crazy to go back to them. I think it's a little bit different recording it than it is just writing it on paper. Because I had some pretty lofty goals going into 2021. And I'll tell you, I accomplished a lot of them. I also really stalled on a bunch. And then I had some opportunities come my way that were completely unforeseen. And because I was just open to saying yes, I did. So let's just go through them really quickly. So one of the things that I really wanted to do was enhance and work on a fabric line. I started that process. I stalled because I encountered a bunch of hurdles, and the hurdles took the fun out of it for me. And that, for me, the fun is a big motivator. And so that immediately moved that project to the back burner. And now I'm ready to pull it back to the front burner and really focus on it. I'm like over the fact that the hurdles were there and I know how to overcome them. And I took the time to figure that out without being angry or frustrated or rush my way through it just to get it done. So I sort of actually feel like the hurdles were a really good lesson for me. And I'm glad they were there. So I didn't accomplish it, but I feel like I still moved the needle forward. One of the other things that I wanted to do more of was like services and events, home decor, a bunch of things. I did run a huge amount of Zoom events, including corporate paint nights, which I talked about doing. Those were wildly successful and something I completely intend on doing more of this year. But because I started doing those events, I had people reach out to me and say, hey, would you be interested in doing this kind of event? And even though I really didn't have plans for it, and as an example, I had a retail store reach out. We're really close to Sauble Beach, where for anybody who's watched the June Netflix series, that's right where the June is, where I painted a mural, fun fact. But the Sauble Beach is a beautiful tourist area in the summer. It's only 20 minutes away from where I live. And a retail store there said, hey, we have this outdoor event space, and I just love you and your energy. Do you want the event space for free on a busy Friday night? And I said yes without even having any plan for what I was going to do. And we hosted a Customize Your Kicks event it sold out very quickly. We have demand for it to happen again next summer and a variety of other events. And so it really opened the door. And I think because I started doing one thing, it was like the universe said, yeah, we can put more on your plate in this little area that you didn't even know was coming, which was super cool. And I had no intention of launching a new website, but I completely rebuilt my website and launched a new website. So it wasn't on my to-do list, but I added it there. I had no intention of launching a print collection, but I did that as well. And I'm super glad I did. That's opened up huge things. And then one of the things that I don't want to say I stalled on, but I completely pivoted. So one of the things that I had been thinking of and really leaning into for 2021 was I was going to invest and go through the process of having completely branded Heather Lynn Travis boxes and thank you cards and like all of it. And I realized that doesn't jive with me. Your package is still gonna arrive safely, but it might not be the most beautiful packaging because I'm just using leftover packaging from the bike shop. I'm just trying to do it as sustainably and as economically as possible. And for me, that's on brand. And I realized that it didn't need to be perfect and pretty. As long as the painting inside is perfect and pretty, I feel like I've met my objective. And so I've been turning like scraps of paper into thank you cards. And to me, it just feels really real and authentic. And I'm handwriting every note to every customer to say thank you. And the package arrives safely. So that was like honestly, I don't even want to say a pivot. It literally was like I was going to do something. And then I realized that's not me. And it doesn't have to be me. And I'm totally okay with that. Yeah. So it was a really interesting year, I think. And I think that's a good thing about having goals is that you can set them and try to achieve them. And other things will come in and you have to be open to those. And other things are going to go away and you have to be okay with that too. Yeah. So it was an interesting, what about you? Because I feel like you accomplished a lot too.
Yeah. So just to preface, I'm going to be talking about my illustration business and my fine line services business where I do graphic design and newsletter writing. So I'm going to be talking about all of it. And so my 3 big goals for the year were visibility, raising my visibility, raising my net revenue, and creating a value statement. And so all of that was sort of predicated around the fact that I would still be getting some kind of salary from my other business, which I actually just sold with my partner in November. So
which, yay,
yay, yes, and I will do an episode about that in the new year when I've had a little bit of a chance to process all of that. But I do think talking about future planning and exit strategies is something that we tend to not think too much about as business owners. And it's something I wish I very much wish I had thought more about. But I just didn't know when I started out, right?
Yes.
So anyway, all that aside, a lot of the goals I set for myself were based on having that salary. And unfortunately, what happened for me is in January, I lost that salary permanently. So I basically went from having my side business, which I knew I was going to be increasing as we got closer to potentially selling the other business, but I didn't expect it to have to, I didn't expect all the weight to have to be on it.
Yeah, so soon, exactly.
So soon. So a lot of the things that I had set as goals to help me get to those 3 big goals, I actually wound up having to just scrap, because basically for the first, I would say the first 7 months of the year, excuse me, I was in survival mode. I just had to bring in revenue to pay my bills. So I felt very much like I was scrambling the whole first half of the year, and for part of third quarter as well.
Which honestly, that accomplishing that is a huge task in and of itself. Like just getting through survival mode, like pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, it was really, I went from being in like a growth mindset to being in a survival mindset, which really changed how I was approaching things. And so it's funny because I had an outstanding October. And I was really pleased with how October went, because quite honestly, everyone, I had a couple of months where I made less than $1,000, like gross, you know, and that was rough. I had a fantastic October, and I feel like based on where I'm at now and what I have lined up for the new year, that I should have a stable income for the next few months anyway. It may not be as high as I want it to be, but it should be stable and it should pay my bills. So that's kind of a big weight. But when I actually sat down and started crunching all my numbers and looking at where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, I was actually very pleasantly surprised. So I had some successes. My overall revenue on just... If we take my salary that I had completely out of the picture and just compare my design and illustration revenue from last year to this year, I more than doubled it. So, yay.
Well done you, yeah.
When I look at my illustration revenue, I tripled my Etsy sales, and my off Etsy sales were about the same as they were last year. So I had some good wins.
Yeah, no kidding. Well done you.
Yeah, the big things that I felt like I didn't do well on were I had fully planned to launch a new website and a Shopify store, and neither of those happened. They're very high up on my list for next year, but those went by the wayside, unfortunately. The one good thing that came out of losing my salary was that it really forced me to sit down and look at my pricing. Oh, I was so underpricing myself, and it was fine when I had other income coming in, but all of a sudden I didn't have other income coming in, and I really had to sit down and strategize about pricing. And so I did raise my prices early in the year, and it wasn't enough. And so then what I did a little later in the year is I sat down, and at this point I had been doing enough newsletter writing and ebook design to know what people were coming to me for. So I sat down and I created packages.
Yeah, brilliant.
And that was a game changer for me. And that's when my revenue really started to go up. And so people can buy packages from me. They pay in advance. And for my newsletters, it's a three month package. So basically they pay me up front and they get 3 months worth of work. And then it's up to them if they want to renew their package, which so far all of them have done. So
brilliant.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because by doing packages instead of charging, was what I was charging before was per newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
And so people would see how much it cost per newsletter and they'd kind of get nervous, right?
Yeah.
But if I packaged it all up as a package,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually able to raise the price even a little bit more, and nobody really seemed to blink. Because I think they just saw like, oh, I'm paying this lump amount and I'm getting this many newsletters over 3 months and
Yep.
it's done and I don't have to worry about it. And so I think people were just a lot more open to paying more when it was in that big lump sum, which may sound counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was a good thing. I'm super happy with how that's worked out. Same with my ebook design. I've done some package creation. I also put together like rate cards and stuff, and just also streamlined my client onboarding. And I still have work to do in this area, but that was another thing that having to go full tilt really alerted me to, was the fact that I was not onboarding people smoothly.
Yeah.
Because in the past I didn't have to worry about it. I was maybe onboarding one person at a time, and it was no big deal. But when it started to become more people, I realized like I have to do this for them, but also for me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was kind of my big thing. I'm super pleased with how it actually wound up turning out. I also realized that in terms of what I sell on Etsy and from my illustration work, that my single stickers are probably not worth doing. I have a couple that sell extremely well and the rest do not. Right. And so I'm thinking that I will probably stop creating new ones for that.
Right.
But my sticker sheets and my prints and my note card sets are all doing really well. And so I had some really big plans I wanted to do around my greeting cards. I wanted to create like a subscription type box and stuff, but that all went out the window, and I had to focus on putting food on my table.
Yes.
So yeah, my when I actually sat down and did my numbers last week, and I looked at what my revenue goals were. So the revenue goals I set for myself were net revenue goals, not gross. And so when things went kind of down the toilet at the beginning of the year, I revised those goals to be gross revenue goals. Instead, same numbers, just changed it from net to gross. And actually the month I had in October I hit my stretch revenue goal.
Yay.
So that was really awesome. I'm still not I'm nowhere near consistently hitting that. That's what I would like to be. I'd like to be hitting that goal that month every month. Like that would be perfect. If I could make what I was making in October and have that be my regular gross revenue monthly every month, I'd be super happy, super duper happy. But I don't think I'm quite there yet. I think I will have months that are like that, but I don't think it'll be consistently at that level for probably another year. So yeah, that was good. Yeah.
Do you feel, so just quickly on that, do you feel like having your feet to the fire? I know obviously you had to change plans, but do you feel like because you had your feet to the fire, the raising of your prices and doing a bunch of things that were probably a little hard to do you feel like that gave you extra incentive and actually helped you just get her done?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yes.
You kind of had to, right?
I mean, I have bills to pay.
Exactly.
And if you know me well, you know that debt, I do not like debt. It terrifies me. So yeah, I mean, I do have an emergency fund for stuff like this, and I did have to dip into it this year. And I hate having to do that. I always feel like a huge sense of shame when I have to dip into my emergency fund. But, as my mom tells me...
You should feel pride to have... Even the fact that you have an emergency fund.
This is what my mom says. She's like, why do you have that fund?
Yeah,
and I'm like, well,
exactly.
for emergencies. And she's like, exactly. Yeah. So you used it for what it was meant for.
That's exactly it. Like, do you really feel guilty when you eat the baking chocolate because you want chocolate, but there's no chocolate in the house? Not really.
No.
So treat it the same way.
So yeah, the other surprising success I had that I didn't realize until I actually looked at the numbers, and this is why looking at your numbers is just so crucial, was I wanted to grow my illustration newsletter list, and it's still very small. Let me just be very clear. It's still very small, and when I was looking at it the other day, I was like, man, I think I only grew it by 10 people all year. Like, it just felt like I hadn't gone anywhere with it. But when I actually looked at the numbers, I quadrupled it this year.
What?
Yeah.
Nice work.
So, it's still less than 100 people. So quadrupling, it's not like I was going from 1,000 to 4,000 or anything like that. But still, I had grown it much more than I thought I had grown it until I actually looked at the numbers. And this is why tracking your numbers and knowing your numbers is so crucial. Sometimes it's going to tell you stuff you don't want to see, but sometimes you're going to look at it and go, holy crap, I did way better than I thought I did.
Yeah.
And that's a really nice feeling when you realize, like, wow, okay.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
So,
wow.
So that was a good one. And then one of the big goals that I did have was to sell this other business. That was a huge goal because I wanted to clear the mental space that it took up. And so we sold that in November. And so that was a big goal that got checked off the list. So that is basically how my year went. I did hit some of my goals, but I had to do a major pivot back in January, which forced me to really change what I was doing in ways that I hadn't expected to have to. So, so I think for both of us, we both kind of learned that you can set all the goals you want, right? But stuff will happen, and you do have to be flexible and ready to pivot a little bit. I'm so tired of the word pivot.
I know. Funny enough, we're rewatching Friends for like the bazillionth time, and that episode was on just like 2 nights ago, and it's still hysterical, and that's the only time that word should be used.
I know. I can't watch that episode without just tears pouring down my face.
I know. Anyway, oh goodness.
Yes. So if you are of the younger generations and you haven't seen that episode of Friends, you need to see it.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm tired of the word pivot because I feel like that's all the last 2 years has been for everyone. But being flexible and having things like emergency funds. Like, I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't had that. That really would have been very scary. So and that's a good goal for people. If you don't have an emergency fund, that's a great goal for this coming year, is to start one. Yeah. And so here's the thing with mine. I've had it started out as my runway fund when I quit my job. And I have been contributing the same amount of money to that fund every month. It comes straight off it's a direct debit kind of thing from my bank account on the 1st and the 15th of the month. And it's been like that for like, I don't know, 15, 16 years now, because I started it before I quit. And even when I'm taking money out of it, that direct debit is still happening from my account to repopulate it. And I don't even notice the money is missing because it's just been taken out of my account for so long. It's not a lot of money. I probably should raise it a little bit at this point. But the point is that there's just money constantly going into it, and it's painless, and it has saved my butt on more than one occasion. And it's even when my car died 3 years ago now, I guess, and I was not in a situation to purchase a new car, my emergency fund is what paid my down payment on my new car. Exactly. And that's what it's there for. Exactly. So it really I just can't say enough about having some kind of fund like that you contribute to monthly, and it doesn't have to be a lot of money to make it happen. So other than that, the only other thing I set goals for was the podcast. I wasn't sure whether I would talk about it or not in this episode because we're getting close to episode 100, and I will do an episode on it there. But the podcast also doesn't earn revenue. It's a revenue loss. Yes. But it's something I do just because I love it. But I did have some goals set for it. And one of the ones that I'm pleased with is where I'm at with in terms of the number of downloads. I did an episode early this year where I really talked about whether or not it was worth doing this, because if nobody's listening, why am I spending all this time and money on it? But now, as of where we're at right now, I'm at a point where, like, you know what? There's enough downloads to make it worth it, whether I ever make a penny or not from it.
Right. There's
I
enough of an
feel
audience.
like there's enough people listening that I am fine continuing on. So that was a pleasant realization, and that really came about in the last few months. We've had a lot of new people start listening, and it's great. And if you're one of them,
Hello.
welcome. Thank you. It's much appreciated. So yeah, because this really is a passion project, and there was definitely points during the year, especially when money was really tight, where I was like, I can't do this. I can't give it the time. But I'm glad that I stuck with it. So yeah.
Yes, we are all of us listeners are glad you do.
Well, I've had some really wonderful guests this year, so that has also helped. Yeah. So that's 2021, such as it is. It's not quite over yet, but
no. So close, though. Honestly, I can't believe December just snuck right up on us, and I'm a little shocked that it's already here. That there's a Christmas tree in my living room, and yeah,
so we're recording this on December 9th, and it feels like it's still November to me. I just can't get myself. I mean, I feel all Christmassy and everything, and I'm excited for Christmas this year, but it doesn't feel like it's December yet. And we had snow this week too. Like we even had snow, and usually that's kind of the trigger point for me. Is it's like, yay, it's Christmas. But yeah, it's just so fast. The days go by so fast. So okay, well, let's talk about what we're planning for the coming year.
Ooh.
So.
World domination.
Yes.
That's on the plan.
That's every year.
That's every year. World domination is on the plan every year.
So yeah, what have you got planned for yourself for 2022?
I have some pretty big goals for 2022. I want to continue on, I think I need, so first off, there's a lot of things that I want to do. And I think one of the goals that I really need, as I was even just thinking about this episode and looking at what I want to do, there's a lot of things I want to do. I think one of the goals that I need to set before I look at all of the things that I want to do is what aligns best with my business and what also will generate profit, money, and then if there are things that I just want to do and I won't lose money doing it, I think I'll still do it. But I need to sort of prioritize, because one of my goals for 2022 is to generate more income from my art. Mm-hmm. And so raising my prices last year, gaining more exposure. I got a lot of new Instagram followers this year. I was looking at the numbers. It jumped quite significantly, which, I've been on Instagram since the beginning, and you know that I've had so many different accounts because I had my blog account. I manage things for different people. So the focus on me hasn't really come down until really recently. So I topped over 1,000, which was really exciting. And it's grown from there, and I've grown my email database. But I think one of my big goals really for 2022 is I need to have my art in front of more people. So I really need to expose myself more. And I think that will help sell.
I have a picture of you in a big raincoat.
In a trench coat.
You open it up and there's a giant print underneath it.
Oh my God, that would be so great. Instead of just seeing like my sports bra that I wear, you actually, brilliant.
That's an Instagram reel for you.
That is totally Instagram. I'm like putting a note of that as we're talking. But yes, I want to expose myself more to, I need to put myself in front of more people. Mm. And so I have been debating, funny enough, like an old school PR campaign, like actually getting myself into magazines and like the Style at Home lists and how do I accomplish that? Because in order, there's all of the people, just like you, right? There's all the people that I've sold to, and some of those people I've sold to quite a number of people, multiple paintings. And in fact, I sold a painting this year. I realized as I was handing it over to and now of course it's a girlfriend. I don't say of course, but she's bought 6 paintings. There are 6 of my paintings hanging in her home.
At some point, she's going to run out of wall space.
That's exactly it. Like, I don't know about, I have 6 of my own paintings and hanging in my own, right? And so there's going to be a max out. And for a lot of people, that's one piece of art from me, right?
Yeah. I mean, realistically, I'm in the same boat, so I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I want more people to have that one piece of art. Mm-hmm. And I also think that exposure comes from doing more events. Mm-hmm. So having the one person who follows me on Instagram or signs up for my e-newsletter, then saying, yeah, I do want to have a girls' night paint night with my girlfriends, which I did a number of last year, and they went off like gangbusters. And so I acquired new people into my community mm-hmm. through that exposure. And I also think adding things so adding the fabric line, adding more prints, which is something I hadn't intended on doing last year, but I'm really glad I did. All of those diversify the audience that I have and potentially allow for more sales within that audience. So it's, 2022, I just want to grow. So grow my audience, grow my business, grow my exposure, grow my product offering. I have my very first solo exhibition lined up for 2023, which is really exciting. And so I have obviously a lot of work to do to get a body of work ready for that. Yeah. Of course. And so there's a lot to do. And so it's really just more is the theme song for 2022 for me. It's just more audience, more and demanding. I want to demand more of myself. I have the dedicated studio space. The studio space has really come into its own this year. I'm now working in it full time for my day job as well as for my artwork. So I'm there like 5-6 days a week. I spend in that studio and I love it. Just more. And I think I need to focus on the business more. I need to understand my numbers more. So it's a lot. I think it's just refining as opposed to having, I feel like I
put down some solid roots this year, and now it's time to just grow some branches.
That's exactly it. It's those. And I did a lot of experimenting this year, putting products on Redbubble, trying out new things. And so I threw a lot of spaghetti at the wall, and now I'm just sort of, okay, now let's refine this and let's figure out where we can go from here. And I also feel like I have enough of an audience that I'm going to actually lean on them even more heavily. I did a couple user surveys in email surveys. I want more from them too, right? Like, tell me what you're looking for. What can I help you with? How can I help your home be happier, be bolder, be brighter, all of those things. And I think even in the more from myself, I'm now even more so leaning into just the authentic. And that goes with what I was saying in terms of the branding and the packaging, just really leaning more into being truly me and not worrying that a perfectly packaged package is going to come to your house. What's perfect about it is what's inside. And really leaning into that, right? So it's more, I would say it's a little bit more ethereal goals for 2022. I'm not going to start chanting to crystals or anything, but I
do you have like a revenue goal in mind that you'd like to hit?
Excuse me, that made me choke.
Sorry.
I don't have an actual number, and I think that should actually be a goal, is to look at my numbers for this year and to set an actual revenue goal for next year.
Yeah.
It's always just sell more than I did last year, and I usually try and do that. But I know for sure I spent more this year. I invested. Now with the prints, I had to invest in having proper sleeves to put it in so that it doesn't get ruined. So there was some investment that I did have to make. They weren't huge.
But let's talk about that for a minute, because I think that's something that always gets forgotten in goal lists and it's so important, it's great to make money. We all need money to survive, but you do have to spend money.
Yeah.
to grow your business. It's really
Yeah.
hard to grow your business without spending some little money. And there's spending some little money. What the hell was that, Melissa? Spending some money. So yeah, and whether that is investing in education for yourself, or investing in equipment, or investing in things like making sure that you can send your product out so that it arrives safely.
Yeah.
And I think we tend, when we start to do our goal lists, we don't think about what we want to invest in. And so those expenses kind of, I don't want to say they're surprises as they happen in the year, but they kind of are. It's like,
They kind of are. And in fact, the fabric line, one of the hurdles that I encountered was that my test yardage. So I had obviously budgeted for test yardage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously I wasn't going to just design fabric and then sell it without doing test yardage. But I had budgeted for test yardage, but I assumed my test yardage would basically come out right the first time. And it didn't come out right the first time. And it didn't even come out right the second time.
Mm.
And so I mean, it improved, right? But I was looking, and that was part of what stalled me, was it's not only stripped the fun out of it, but I just kept looking at all of these. I have stacks now of fabric yardage that's not perfect, that I spent money on, that, oh my goodness, and that total just keeps getting higher and higher.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's like, oh, I'm going to have to sell even more fabric to make up for the loss of this test yardage. And then the mind reels with, what do I do with that? You know, you and I had talked about using some scraps and what you could do to repurpose that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how can I repurpose this yardage scrap into something that I can, is still, at least then it's all not for naught, or whatever the expression is. You know what I mean?
You can definitely do some things with that.
And of course I can, but it was the taking of the fun away, but it was also the financial, like, holy shit, I've spent a lot of money. I'm nowhere near my goal, and this is no fun anymore.
Do you think if you had set aside a bigger budget for test runs, and you were still within that budget, that the fun would still be there to a certain extent?
So funny enough, if I had realized that I had to set aside that much money for a test budget, I don't know if I would have gone ahead with the project to begin with.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but now, so funny enough, now that I'm halfway through and I realize the budget is what it is, and I've had such amazing demand. Like, people keep coming back to me, when's fabric going to be ready? When's fabric going to be ready?
Mm-hmm.
So I know the demand is there. I know I have an audience who's wanting to buy it. And if I hadn't spent that money, even on the shitty test yardage, I would never have had that external motivation to continue. Mm. And so it's sort of, the mistakes all lined up to make it still happen. Because I wouldn't have had that enthusiasm if I hadn't had that test yardage. But I wouldn't have done the test yardage if I had said to myself, all right, Heather, you're going to have to spend $1,000 to, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a chicken or the egg, like what came first? I really don't know. But I am going forward with it. It will happen in 2022, and I am comfortable with the amount of money. And funny enough, to the opposite of you, I had a very good year in my marketing PR job that I am now saying to myself, Heather, you can take some of this extra and put it towards your art.
Yeah, that's a really good feeling when you can do that. It's nice when you can have a multi-revenue stream business. And I know that PR is I know you're trying to move more towards the art side of it, but still having that consistent revenue stream that's doing well gives you options, right?
Yes.
And what you can do in other parts of your business.
Yes, so, absolutely. And that, I think, but I do think I need to be, and that's part of the sort of doing more, but being more strategic about it, is there's a lot of advice that I give to small business clients that I don't take myself. And I really need to do a better job of that. Because I really, we talk about it here, is that if just because it's a side hustle doesn't mean it's not a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to look at it as a business. And that, I think, sometimes I'm letting the glow and it's the green glow of the other business overshadow the art. And that's because I want to make more money with the art. I would love eventually to become a full-time artist.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, the PR money is going to stop at some point, right? And so, yeah. So, and that's, diversifying the stream. But I'm glad for all of the hurdles that this year brought, but for next year, for sure, more. And I'm glad, like, I didn't have a goal last year of building myself a new website, but building this new website, everything that I'm going to add in this new business year fits in. I can plug and play into this website. Like, right. I designed it with that in mind. And so, I think even if I didn't do that last year, I would have had to have done it this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I think it's good to discuss the goals and it's good to set them out, but it's also good to realize that times change, things change, opportunities come your way that you never thought would.
Yeah. Do you sit down and review your goals throughout the year?
I don't, and I should.
Yeah. I'm in a mastermind group and we do a quarterly goal meeting where we sit down and just review our goals and how we're doing. And it's a really good exercise to do because, for one thing, it keeps you on track on the things that you are still wanting to be on track with. But it also is great because when you reevaluate every quarter, sometimes it's really obvious where you need to change things up. It's like, you know what? That's just not working.
I'll say this though, in my bullet journal, which has fine line designs, lovely little multicolored stickers identifying the day. In my bullet journal, I do weekly, but then I also do a 2-page spread for the month, projects that I have to do, things that I want to do. And when I have to transfer things from one month to the next, I do think very critically about why, Heather, did you not get that done? What are the excuses? So yes, I guess
you are checking in. You're checking in.
I am checking in. I just don't think of it as
it's not a formal check-in, but you are checking in every month, and that's what's important. I think is just to what do they say? It's SMART goals, and the T stands for track, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
You do need to pay attention to these things. If you don't look at the numbers, you don't know where you're going, and it's not to say that you have to stay on that track, right?
No.
Like, looking at numbers can be very reassuring if something's not feeling right to you, but you're not really sure if it's the right decision. Sometimes looking at your numbers can be the thing that says to you, yeah, you know what? There's a reason you're not feeling right about this.
Yeah.
And here it is. And so, and vice versa, right? There's, hey, this is doing way better than I thought it was. Maybe I should double down on this because
totally.
I'm really hitting it out of the park. So yeah, I do think it's important to take a step back regularly and just check in with yourself and see if things are still working or if you're still on the right path for the year. So, yeah.
And what about you? Because this is like, you've sold the business. So this is an interesting year, right?
This is an interesting year. And I feel like as I was going through all of this, I sort of feel like a lot of the things I wanted to do in 2021 are going to hopefully move into 2022. So, visibility was really high up on my list last year. It is going to be high up on my list for 2022. My new website will be going live at some point. It's about halfway done. I could launch the first part of it probably in January. Yes, I still want to keep growing my newsletter lists for both my business and for the podcast. I want both to be more visible. You were just talking about how you had Instagram growth. I had some Instagram growth. I just want to say that I hit the 2,000 follower mark 4 times in the last 2 months.
So that's honestly the number of times every time I'd be like, I'm at 1,000. Fuck, I'm not at 1,000. And then I'd be like, I'm at 1,000. And then I'm not.
And it's very humbling because the other the business that I sold, we had in the 20,000 number of, and that just seems so effortless to grow. And here I am. I feel like every follower is like,
Oh yeah.
wow, I want to have a celebration.
I had somebody unsubscribe recently, and funny enough, after they bought something from me, then they unsubscribed, and literally I was like, what did I do? It feels so, oh,
it's
anyway.
weird. And I am very much a proponent of growing your business away from social media and just using social media as a marketing tool. But still, I just want to stay at that 2,000 mark for like longer than a week, please.
Yes.
Anyway, so I want to increase the visibility of that and of the podcast. Those are two really big things for me. Another thing that was really important to me last year was a value statement, and I got nowhere with it. It just went, I just got put completely on the back burner because I had to make money. But that's something that's hugely important to me. And you touched on it even a little bit in terms of talking about your packaging. But I'm constantly revisiting my packaging. I'm constantly revisiting what it is I'm creating, because I really, for those of you listening, I live in BC and we have had tremendous weather this year, and it has all been directly related to climate change. And it has had me thinking, it was so hot here this summer that there were like continuous days where I couldn't work because I was just trying to keep my little household alive.
Yeah.
We don't have air conditioning, and it was 45 degrees multiple days in a row.
Yeah.
Can't work in that kind of weather.
No kidding. And then pets, parents, elderly people, like that's just not healthy. Yeah, exactly.
I have an older dog and I have an older dad. So, it was a real challenge. And then this winter we've been hit with floods and landslides, a lot of which have been catastrophic. And the reason they've been catastrophic is because of the damage that happened during the summer. And so it's really got me thinking about stuff, like the stuff that my business generates, the stuff that I use to run my business, the stuff I have in my house, the stuff I spend my money on, and what I'm asking people to buy from me. Like, I don't want people buying stuff from me if it's just going to wind up being clutter somewhere or wind up.
I'll tell you, that's my big debate with Redbubble now.
Yes.
Yep.
And I understand.
Yep, because I have tons of people who like the gateway drug is the cell phone case on Redbubble. And that's the gateway drug to get, Heather's the heroine, and I've almost gotcha. Yeah. But I'm encouraging buying shit.
Yeah.
Like, and
plastic.
Yeah. Exactly. Like it, and I'm staring. You have one of my cell phone cases. I have one of my cell phone cases. Like, it's a very, that's a big, I'm totally with you. That's a big debate, and thinking about it and how you encourage like the life that I want to live, but then also as a seller, what I'm encouraging people to do. Yes.
Yeah. It's a really difficult challenge, especially when it doesn't jive with your ethics and your values. And this is what doing a value statement is all about. It's really wrestling with these kinds of questions and figuring out what it is you're okay with and what it is you're not okay with. And so this is stuff that I have been thinking about all year. And I've been doing a lot of research into packaging and things and where I want to go. And I don't, most of what I create is 100% recyclable. So, I feel good on that. But even so, recycling still takes up resources, right? It's not the panacea of,
exactly.
of sustainability. So it's a lot to think about. And, the really cool thing is there's been so many leaps forward, in terms of coming out with sustainable materials and sustainable practices and things like that. So but it is in the back of my mind constantly, and is something I want to spend a lot of time on. this year.
So both of us have the goal of an existential crisis for 2022. Is really that's what I'm hearing.
Well, and we've talked about doing an episode on managing waste within your business, and I think that will be on the table for next year. Yeah, and I think it's something I'm certainly thinking more and more about, just after seeing the direct impact of what we're doing. Has, like, climate change is not in the future anymore. It's here right now. Yes. And I know it is because I lived through a year of it. Yeah. So that's a big one. The other two big things for me, stable income, like a stable monthly income. That's a huge goal for me this year. I feel like I'm much closer to it than I was in January. And the other one, I find this very ironic as somebody who sells planner stickers, but organization.
It's do as I say, not as I do. We've covered this.
Oh, you know what? I'm normally very organized, but somewhere around June or July, I don't know if it was the weather or just desperation to just take on whatever was being thrown at me, but I stopped using my paper planner and I stopped using Asana, which is the tool I use for my project management. I just stopped using them. And it resulted in October and November being a gong show, basically. I just realized at the end of November, I cannot do another November like this. It was ridiculous. I have to get myself back on track and back into being more organized. So that I have a 2-week break over the holidays. I close my office every year for 2 weeks.
Good for you.
And that is what I'm going to be working on, is getting myself back up and running and sorted out. It's great to have multiple streams of revenue and multiple, which we both do. But if you're not organized when you do that, it turns into just a giant swamp of mess, goo.
No kidding. I really have to, particularly because I try and balance, painting days versus office days. That's like, if I don't schedule it out, and particularly, funny enough, this week and last week, I've had a bunch of in-person events. And boy, like those, and driving to those, and then trying to schedule things around. It was like,
exhausted after doing one? Like,
I'll tell you, I was, and I did not realize how much I rely on lip reading. But in a room, like in a really crowded room of people and everybody wearing masks, I was like, I need to get my hearing checked. I can't hear what you're saying. It was exhausting, but more from the constantly being aware of, like, what am I touching? It was not exhausting from the human interaction. No, I thrive off the human interaction.
That's right. You're much more extroverted than I am.
Yeah, it charges my battery right back up.
Yeah, so that's basically where I'm at for the year. For next year, it's continuing to work on visibility, to establish a value statement, even if it's only for myself, and to make sure I have a stable income through multiple revenue streams. So that's where I'm focusing my time, I think.
Good for you.
Yeah. So, and I'll be talking more about what I have planned for the podcast in episode 100, I think. So I'll talk more about that there. But yeah, so, lots going on.
Yes. And so I'm curious to hear from our listeners, obviously, if any of our goals are similar to your goals or totally different, or I'd love to hear from you. Share them with Melissa and She Looked Up, and let us know. Because to me, hearing other people's goals, like Melissa, when you and I talk about goals, I'm like,
it gets me so pumped up.
Exactly. I'm like, I didn't think of that. That's a good idea. I'm going to steal that goal. Like,
even if I don't want to steal the goal, I just get excited when people get excited about what they're doing.
That's exactly it. And I think too, it helps you think outside the box and be like, that's interesting. Okay. Like,
definitely.
It totally does. So I think, and even if you just write them down on a little Post-it note, and like, I love that Jim Carrey, that he wrote himself $1 million check to cash when he became famous, and he still has the check and carries around. Like, that to me, I'm like, that could be us someday.
Well, sometimes the way to make these things happen is to really go through those kind of visualization exercises. I know it
Yes.
sounds really woo-woo to a lot of people,
No,
but
totally.
there is something about writing things down. And
Yes.
I have done it enough times in my life now, even if it wasn't planned, like I just have written myself notes, and I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten that I wrote those things, and I've been flipping through old papers or old notebooks and I see it written down, and it's like, I did that.
Yeah.
I actually did that. And I don't
Yes.
even remember thinking about it or writing it down, but there's something about that connection of handwriting it, not typing
Yes.
it, like actually with a pen on a piece of paper.
Yep.
And there's something clicks in your brain, and I don't know the science behind it, but I'm sure there is some of your brain sort of takes that and works on it in the background.
Yep.
You know, and I was talking a little bit with some friends. So we transferred ownership of our business on November 1st, and there was about a week and a half, 2 weeks after that where we were transferring the physical assets, you know, the website, and that all takes some time. Can't do it overnight. But when the last thing was done, literally within 24 hours, all of a sudden my brain was just firing on all synapses, and I was having all these ideas and stuff, and I was like, what is going on here? Like, because for months I had been stuck in this spot where nothing was happening. Like I wasn't being creative. I wasn't having ideas, like nothing. I was feeling really, I don't want to say burnt out, because it wasn't burnt out, but just stuck. And then I realized, like, that weight, that
Yes.
huge compartment that my brain had set aside for that business was now empty.
Yeah.
And my brain was like, oh, look we just found a whole new closet.
Exactly.
Like, let's fill it up. We need to get some
it's
shoes.
Yes.
And you don't even realize it until it happens. You're just
Yes.
like, so anyway, yes, there's, I think sometimes writing those things down also clears that little weight
Yes.
that idea was having on your shoulders.
Yes.
Even if it's a good weight, right? But by
Totally.
putting it somewhere, you are no longer worrying that you're going to forget it, or that, it's going to slip into the ether, and you've marked it.
Yes.
So yeah, write those things down. And as Heather said, I'll put something up on Instagram in our stories where you can share your goals for the year with us. We'd love to hear them and see what you're all up to. And yeah. So this is going to be, I believe, the last new episode of 2021. So let me pull out my calendar. The next 2 Fridays land on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. And so I think I will probably replay an older episode those 2 weeks, because I'm hoping that all of you are spending time with your family or your friends or your dogs
or with a good book and a cup of tea.
or just taking some time to chill out and relax. And so maybe listening to a podcast is not really high up on your list of things to do. And so I would rather save some juicy episodes for the new year for you when we're all motivated to start doing new things. But so for all of you who have been listening this year, I just want to say thank you so much. The podcast has definitely grown this year, and it wouldn't have happened without all of you. It's very appreciated. And I hope that you all have a very Merry Christmas, those of you who celebrate Christmas. I hope all of the rest of you have a wonderful holiday season. And I really hope that everyone has a very healthy and hopeful new year.
Yes, absolutely. Up and away.
That's right. So, and Merry Christmas to you, Heather.
Yes, and Merry Christmas to you. And I thank you very much for making the cutest holiday cards and holiday tags that I got to put on all of my Christmas presents this year.
Oh, yay.
Yes.
They were fun this year. I had fun doing them.
Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Claus tags. Those are just the cutest thing in the whole wide world. I love them.
Thank you. So, thanks everybody. And we will see you all in 2022.
2022.
Crazy.
I don't think we're I didn't realize we could be that old and still be in 2022, or be this young in 2022 is what I should say, because that seems like a million miles away when we were teenagers. Anyway.
Yeah. Yes.
Crazy.
I don't like to think about it.
I know. I still write 1990 something every once in a while, and I'm like, Heather, where are you?
Yeah, I mean, do you realize that 1990 was over 30 years ago?
That's crazy.
Yeah, I graduated from high school in 1990.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so there you go, people.
Wow. So when I say I listen to 90s hip hop, really I'm just dancing with the oldies is what I'm...
Yeah, basically. Do you remember... Sorry, people, we're going off on a little tangent here, but hey. So back when I was in junior high, it was the early 80s. And I remember doing a fitness class. There was this program called Fit for Kids, I think. Mm-hmm. Did you guys do that? I don't know. Anyway, we started with it when I was in elementary school, and it was basically 15 minutes of aerobics at the end of the day that you did in the classroom, and different students would be pulled in to do lead the aerobics thing, whatever. and you could bring your own music, and I loved 50s music, which back in the early 80s, everybody thought was really old. But You know what? In the early 80s, music from the 1950s was 30 years ago.
Yes.
So basically, it's the same gap from 1990 to 2020 as it was from 1950 to 1980.
That's bananas.
Yeah. So there you go.
Wow.
You're an old lady listening to old lady music.
Wow. So, wow. Yeah. On that note, geez Louise.
On that note, Happy New Year, everybody.
Yes, exactly.
We'll see you next year. Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshelookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian creative women, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show via your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. We always love to hear from you, so we'd love it if you'd leave us a review through iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a note via our website at andshelookedup.com or come say hi on Instagram at andshelookedup. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.